Good evening, everyone. It is 7:01. Time to begin our first warned select board meeting of the month of March. Before we begin, this is Lisa Miller's last meeting with us.
I made it,
So,
essentially.
first of all, Lisa, thank you for stepping up and running and serving. You've been a huge asset, and your talents and vice chair.
Thank you. Well,
Your expertise and knowledge has been very, very helpful. And we wish you the best, and you will be missed.
I just, I mean, if it was town meeting, I'd wait to say it tomorrow, but we don't do that. I really appreciate the voters voting for me. I mean, that was a real moment where you don't know.
Yeah.
You can't make it happen the way you want, and it came out that way. And the second thing is I've learned a lot about Richmond that I probably wouldn't have learned otherwise. Mostly good, a little bad, but mostly good. And I'm glad we moved here. We're not leaving. So
Good.
maybe I'll run again if I live. So,
I had
Thank
a
you.
different take on that election, but no,
well, look who's sitting next to me.
it's been great to serve with you.
Yeah, you too. You too. There. Sorry, I beat you.
You don't have to apologize.
No, I was happy.
Fair, yeah.
It's a fair fight.
I appreciate the discussion you've brought to the table, and I don't think it's a bad thing that we didn't always agree 5-0. I think it's a good thing to have differing opinions and spirited discussion, and that
Can you see us?
often results in a stronger decision. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll tell you what, I think a lot of this board, this board has had plenty of chances to prove itself inept or something. It never has. And
Yeah,
actually,
so they just started, so.
You were a strong part of that, so thank you.
sometimes. Thank you.
Before I begin, would anybody care to make a public comment?
I would just like to remind people of the likelihood of flooding as a result of predicted rain and high temperatures. We have had bad road conditions in the past at times like these, and it does not pay to take water on the road lightly, so be careful out there.
It looks like the potential for flooding will be worst on Thursday is the prediction. Now, again, very early, hopefully nothing will happen, but as we know, these things can sneak up on us and things can change pretty quickly. So keep an eye on the weather. History has taught us that it can be disastrous. Any other public comments? Hearing none. Moving on. Josh, board, any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
I don't think so. Nope.
Okay. So just a friendly reminder, tomorrow, Tuesday, March 4th is town meeting. Everything is on Australian ballot this year. I see some discussion in town. There's still a little bit of confusion around that. That is a change for this year. Remember to get out and vote. Ballots were not mailed this year. So you had the opportunity to go to the town clerk's office and pick up a ballot through today. Have you not done that as of yet? You will have to go and vote in person tomorrow. Anything else on town meeting? Okay. Next is an update on the police hiring, possible executive session where we do have information to go over.
Yes.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I move to find that premature public knowledge about police department hiring would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
David Disparda, I will second that.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Bard.
Or could you put that mic?
Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I. Bard, I.
Jay, aye.
David, aye. First motion approved.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into executive session to discuss police department hiring under the provisions of 1 VSA 313A3 of the Vermont statutes, and to invite town manager Josh Arneson and town attorney John Flesh into the executive session.
David Disparda, I will second that.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Bard. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I. Bard, I.
Jay, aye.
And David, aye. We are in executive session.
Is there anyone next door?
Okay, so we're out of executive session. Everybody, online? Assuming yes. So I have an update regarding police chief position. The update is that we will not be going forward with Anthony Cambridge's employment with the town. I'm not going to comment on any details based on it being a personnel matter.
Thank you, Josh. Next on our agenda is consideration of approving a vendor and a funding source for an electronic access control system for doors at the town center.
So this is for a keyless access control system. I will actually turn it over to Assistant to the Town Manager, Duncan Wardwell. He can give a much better overview of this project than I can.
Right, no, I think we went through the RFP process, we looked at a bunch of different measures of how to do it, and I think once again, it's like this project's a good project to do, but there's a lot of other projects we can do at the town center, so I think it's worth considering the MEI RFP for our consideration, but likewise, it's a lot of money to do, but the other ones are all way above that. And I can explain some of the differences, but I think it's more just a contractor issue. I wouldn't be able to tell you necessarily why ones are more than the others.
Okay.
So for the members of the public who are wondering what we're talking about.
Sorry.
Right now, the town center is secured by keys, physical metal keys. And it has been a while since the keys have been changed, so it's likely that there are a lot of keys floating around out there, and that's, periodically people just rekey buildings, but we don't live in 1970 anymore. And so the idea of doing a card-based or app-based access is intended to make it possible to give people access that can be revoked without having to rekey the whole building. And also give people access to certain parts of the building without giving access to others. So for example, our tenants, our community cares camp, the Richmond Historical Society, the Richmond Senior Center, Mount Mansfield Community TV, can be given access that gets them to their offices without giving them access to the entire building. So that's essentially what we're looking at here. The bids that went out originally included video surveillance, but that was taken out. This is just for the access system.
Right, and the reason we took out the video surveillance was we do have a video surveillance system in and around the police department, which includes the main entryway, the parking lot, and the hallway entryway to the police station. So if we want to add additional cameras to that, I think with additional different people can see different cameras, we can do that, and probably be easier to have one system for video surveillance than two separate systems.
This is something I've been pushing for years. Keys are good at providing security, but they're not very good at managing access. The problem with keys is they can be copied, they can be lost, they can be replaced, they can be lost track of. With this system, not only are we keeping the building secure, but we're limiting access and there's full transparency. So, people should only be going where they're supposed to go and there's a record of them going there. And with the video camera, this would be expanding the system we currently have. And should anything nefarious happen, the first question any investigating officer would ask is, okay, where's your security footage? Well, we really need that. In my opinion, this is something that's been direly needed for a long time, and I'm glad to see it moving forward.
Well, I think David and Jay pointed out too, it's like not only the access, it's the transparency of who's there. So you can at least work backwards if you need to and see what things go on. So you can allow different access through key fobs, through apps, through different measures these days versus a hardware key, which is tough to contain.
Right now, if somebody said who was here at 2:00 in the morning last night.
We could they would be able to tell us, we'd be able to track it.
Well, in the future we would be, but status quo right now, we have no.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, there's no way. Yeah, there's no way. No, and once again, it's like once again, we do a very good job. It's a very, I think, safe, good environment. We have a lot of people, just keeping an eye on the place. But yeah, it's just one of those things that it's, who knows how many keys are out there. We prop open doors sometimes. We don't prop open doors. We, do different things to just check on the building as we should, which is good. But likewise, we could have a better system, but it is a difficult, cost. So I understand that.
But in my opinion, this gets us to a point where we should already be.
It is the year 2025. We don't have
Right.
City on the Moon and we don't have flying cars, but
Or a monorail.
the monorail is still a possibility. Anyway. Mr. Chairman, I move to enter into an agreement with MEI Electrical Contractors for an electronic access control system for doors at the town center in an amount not to exceed $41,500 paid for with funds from the town center and library reserve fund.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
This is Bart. I will second that, David.
Thank you, Bard. Any further discussion? Adam?
No, I'm on board with this, but for transparency is the wrong word, coherency. Would it be wise to send this to the town center and library committee for review? I don't know if approval is necessarily the right word because it is an expenditure, but I guess review for compatibility with any short-term projects. It's up to you.
Yeah,
guys. I think the
they
committee
haven't-
would appreciate that, but I know we had talked, did I email you about it or Duncan and I talked about it? And it's kind of unclear on
Yeah, I mean, I
our
think,
agenda, but it was just like,
Oh.
yes, like, I don't know what you want.
Was this in the town center reconstruction revitalization plan?
It was, I believe the access control was part of it.
Okay.
I guess I don't think anyone will be, can't speak for the entire board. My hunch is that no one will be opposed to it. The only consideration would be that if we are going to add it to things that might be immediately worked on or rebuilt. I don't think a comprehensive rehab is an immediate thing, but there are potentially doors that need to be redone. Stuff.
Bard?
So my wheels were turning in a similar fashion. I was thinking, I'm assuming that the equipment can sort of be reused if you take a door out and you put it somewhere else or replace it. Presumably the equipment can be taken off and put on
Wiring.
a newer door.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine we're putting in a system too that'll be modular wiring.
Yeah, each lock will have a unique ID. And the lock doesn't care physically what door it's on.
It's a minimal amount of.
Yeah, I mean,
rewiring.
if you've ever gone into a hotel and used your app to check in, it's exactly that.
Yep.
Except without the jacuzzi bath.
Jack on it?
Yeah.
A vibrating bed.
I don't know if anybody still has those, but
They take quarters.
in the
Oh.
chat, there's a, sorry, I don't want, if you're not done. Adam, I don't want to cut you off, I thought you were done.
Yeah, I'm done. Thanks.
So the question about the cost per year, Duncan, if I'm reading this right, I think it's $1,750 per year for the cloud system.
Yes, I think it's about, it's under $2,000 a year for the cloud maintenance, so on and so forth, of just like keeping the system going.
And then does that include administration or do we have to administer it ourselves? How does that all?
No, we would be, I would probably have to do some sort of administration. I think the initial setup would be a little tough getting everyone in, but I think once you get it going and figure it out, it wouldn't be too much year by year. Once again, it's no different than me going in and having to open up the door on a Sunday, for someone and make sure things are open. And
Well, I hope
unlock
it's-
it physically and make sure things don't, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. So there's we can spend my time different ways, but I think this one is more like a little bit closer to what we should have for security and also just like, access points. Hey, this person went in, boom, got it.
right. And as far as setting up the initial accounts, once the initial doors have been configured with the hardware and assigned each door an ID, you can actually take an Excel spreadsheet. And
Yeah,
put-
it's not that hard.
And just say Bard Hill, this email address, Why the email address? Well, because when you sign into the app, you need an identifier. But
Right.
you just say, has access to these doors. And then you just
Right.
basically take that Excel spreadsheet and you upload it and you're in business.
It's a lot like a
That,
software.
that's the least of my worries. It's the hardware setup that worries me more in our building. It's like, how do we get it all installed would be my bigger concern. The software will be easy to do. It's just, yeah, we gotta install this stuff, and it's a significant amount of money, and I respect that.
And periodically, we will need to change the batteries and the locks, just like hotels do. Because they're not, a door doesn't have a power cord running to it.
Okay, any further discussion? Are we ready for a vote? Following the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye?
Adam, I.
Bart, I.
David, aye. Next, we have consideration of making an appointment to the Housing Committee.
Mhm.
Is she here?
I saw her
Yes.
earlier. Yeah.
Hi, good evening, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Thank you.
Is that it?
Do you have any questions of us before we engage you in conversation?
I don't know. I didn't really know what to expect, so I'm here to answer questions or tell you a little bit about myself. But I'll take a prompt.
Bard?
I would just, I'm looking at your responses to the questions, but for those listening tonight who have not read it, maybe just do a minute or two of who you are and how you came to be interested in the Housing Committee.
Sure, thank you. My name is Mairead O'Reilly. I am a relatively new resident of Richmond. I moved here in 2023 with my husband, and then exactly a month later had a child. So now the three of us and our wily golden retriever live up on East Hill Road, and we've been loving it. Professionally, I am a lawyer, and throughout my entire career so far, housing has been fairly central to my work. I have essentially been advocating for folks to access a part of the housing pie, so to speak. And at this point, I'm on a career pause. So I'm home with my young son, but housing is, I'm still deeply interested in housing, and am also deeply intrigued in the possibility of working on housing from a different angle. So instead of, always trying to help folks get a slice of that pie, maybe work on it from the perspective of seeing how we might be able to expand that pie or make it more nutritious, not to totally beat that analogy to death. But I think, housing is the cornerstone to every healthy community. And to the extent that I could join with other folks on the Housing Committee to become subject matter experts to really look at and know what's happening in Richmond, what's happening with Richmond's housing, and what possibilities might exist to improve and expand that housing, and provide that sort of expertise to the boards who do make the decisions in the town. I would be honored to be able to do that.
Lisa?
How do I pronounce your name? Is it Mairead?
Mairead, yeah. It rhymes with parade.
Oh, thank you. I think you're picking just exactly the right town at the right time and the right committee, because there's a lot of need for someone who knows what the options are for housing and why certain things are not allowed or are allowed. And I think you'll find you'll be well received and pretty busy. So thank you for your interest.
Absolutely.
So Mairead, one technical question. You had applied for the alternate seat. However, there is a full seat open. Did you have a preference for which seat you wanted to be appointed to?
In speaking with Mark, I think it makes sense to just apply for the the full, regular seat.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
David, real quick. Yes, yes,
You may go.
Okay. I just want to read an email that I got from Connie Van Egan. She wasn't able to attend this evening, but she said, thanks for the notification. As a housing committee member, I had planned to attend in full support of Maraid's application as a community member. However, I have another commitment Monday night, so please send my support in advance. So
Good endorsement.
Bard?
So David, if you're ready, I'd like to move to appoint Mairead O'Reilly to a seat on the Housing Committee with a term expiring in 2026.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Any further discussion?
Right, I just want to say I have 2 kids too, and I know it's tricky to take time to do this stuff when you have kids, so I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Thank you.
And it's not an easy job. If housing was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yes. Yeah.
Both.
Well, before we vote, I just want to say thank you for your interest, and this is a very tough problem to solve, and I'm confident that you will bring some new energy to the table. So calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Jane, aye.
And David, aye. It is unanimous. Welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have an update from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation on notice of intent for the Southview stormwater permit.
okay, so we do have Terry Purcell joining us this evening. He's the operational section supervisor from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, Watershed Management Division Stormwater Program. I think the topic of conversation tonight is around the notice of intent, which we've talked about a couple of times in a couple of previous meetings. So the original notice of intent is included in the packet for this meeting, as well as a letter from the town that accompanied the notice of intent and the initial feedback from the state on the incomplete status of the notice of intent. Part of the process to complete the notice of intent has to do with completing the engineering. The state has replied and states that we can get extensions to complete that engineering because they understand that that takes some time. And our initial filing was really just to say that we're kind of making progress on this. And they also understand that in the wintertime, it's hard to do the site visits necessary to complete the engineering. The other issue, though, that needs to be discussed is that prior to finalizing the NOI, either the town needs to be the sole permittee or the town and a homeowners association have to be co-permittees. As we've discussed in previous select board meetings dating back to, I think, August, there is not a homeowners association at Southview. There seems to be no desire of the homeowners to create a homeowners association. So becoming co-permittees on the notice of intent seems plausible. So I've invited Terry here to talk about maybe what next steps there could be for the town, and we could discuss this in more detail, knowing that he's much better versed in the state's rules and regulations than I am.
No, Watson.
It's a new age we're living in. Go ahead, Terry.
That's at the telephone, I think.
Good evening, everybody. I thought for a second I was being reprimanded for some reason. So I don't have a huge amount in the way of updates. We can certainly discuss the topic of permittees for Southview. But just to touch on some of the legislative discussions, I don't know if any of you have been following the House Environment Committee and discussions around S24. For one thing, there may be an extension to the due dates that for 3-acre sites that would be put into statute. That would be, at this point, if it does go through, this is all still in committee, nothing is passed or gotten out of committee as far as I know. That would be 2028 if it goes through, but that date would not impact the ARPA due dates for those sites that got the POA ARPA funding. So we had discussed the September 2025 in terms of getting complete permit application submitted with the design plans and all the supporting materials. We're not expecting that to change. There are some discussions around ARPA and getting some flexibility with those dates and deadlines, but at this point, we can't speak to anything that is concrete or fully expected. The other discussions with these bills have been support from municipalities. There has been discussion regarding liability for municipalities taking full legal responsibility for 3-acre stormwater systems. They're aware of the issue. I think it's just about getting the language right and just thinking about how, trying to truly fix the problem effectively. And they've had discussions with Michael O'Grady, their counsel, on that topic. And he has advised that that can be tricky, that subject. They're looking at other states. I believe they discussed Maine, where there was apparently a fairly egregious example of a municipality being hit with a pretty large amount that they ultimately had to pay after, I think, a court proceeding that they were found liable. I don't know all the details of that, but his point was generally just that, in crafting this for Vermont, those are the types of situations that they want to address and make sure they get the language right in statute. And then, of course, a big part of it is funding support generally for municipalities, but also generally for 3-acre sites. And the DEC Stormwater Program has provided testimony during several of those House Environment Committee meetings, as have others from DEC, more on the funding side of it. So with regards to the town taking full legal responsibility for the 3-acre system, I can address any questions on that topic. If you guys have any.
Bart?
Well, Terry Barthill, we've actually discussed this at length a number of times. And the approach that we have discussed to date has been to proceed with the engineering so we know how much it would cost in total, what the impact on private property owners would be, which is twofold, I think. One is, what's the town's share and what is the property owner's share? And then within that, which properties are actually impacted? I don't know if you've seen or listened to or participated in those discussions, which there are probably 5 total with the select board, something like that, and members or residents of that part of town. So that's what we've talked about today. So rather than the town, I've gotten very clear feedback from people outside of Southview that they're not interested in paying the town for the Southview private property part. But I've also heard from residents of Southview, how much money are we talking? And to date, we don't really have a dollar figure, so it becomes a pretty abstract conversation. And then I think those are foundational. What's the total cost? What's the share of the town in terms of our impermeable surfaces based on public roadways? Then how much is for the property owners? And then within that, how to divide it up. And the special tax assessment is a somewhat tedious process, as I think you're aware, because we don't have one currently. So that's sort of where we've been at, both from legal advice and public advice. We've concluded it is not the time for the town to jump in and sign off on everything and say, we'll figure it out later. And I know the view of the state is it would be great if the town would take this over and figure out how to pay for it.
Later.
But what you see depends on where you sit. And in this case, I don't sit in the state, I sit in the select board seat. And it looks a little different, frankly, than I think perhaps it looks from your seat in state government. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that is helpful. Yeah, and I think that certainly there's been a lot of discussion in the legislature about the orphan sites. I think there are about 17, 18 of these 3-acre sites that were previously orphans, and the difficult situation that they're in. You know, from our perspective, you know, we can't move forward, for example, with, you know, whether it's 40 or 50 individual homeowners. And I know we've discussed this already, but we don't have the ability to do that. So we're also, you know, we'd like to be able to give municipalities more options here. And that's what I think the intent is of the legislative changes. So we're hoping that we'll see something come out of this, and you know, we'll see where that ends up. But if you guys have any other questions for me right now, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. David, Josh, is it, maybe we should talk, you know, if we're looking a bit, it feels to me a little over the horizon to a special assessment district, what it would take to set that up. Assume we're dividing the money to say the town pays for this based on public roads, and the homeowners, absent a homeowners association, pay for this. My thinking has been it applies to all the properties within the area defined by the 3-acre rule, and there's a boundary. You're either inside the boundary or outside the boundary, right? And that then we'd have to presumably come up with a formula, whatever that dollar figure is, to share across all of those homeowners, whether it's by share of impervious surface or by grand list value. There has to be some mechanism by which that special assessment is made. And we haven't really gotten into that kind of detail. And then, as I understand it, the special assessment district needs to be approved by voters. Do I remember that correctly? So there's a couple of steps that would have to take place before we were able to simply bill the homeowners.
Would it be worth maybe inviting Attorney Dave Rue to a future meeting to discuss how we would set that up, or a couple of select board members to talk with him and myself? How would you like to proceed on that question?
I think we're while it's a little over the horizon, it will come up over the horizon pretty soon. So at least if we had a sense of what steps need to occur in what sequence, that seems like a prudent thing to plan ahead. Thinking of this like a project, right?
Yeah.
Needs to happen at some point, so yeah, get it started.
Go ahead.
I've read on the Vermont website what a special tax assessment is, and it's supposed to be used for something that's a benefit to homeowners. Could you explain to me how me having to spend money that neighbors don't is a benefit to me?
I can't.
How
Just
about
for the
Mr.
record,
Purcell?
Just for the record, your
I'm
name?
Paige Cleta, and I live in Southview.
Okay.
In the 3-acre site, 5 homes down from people that don't.
You make an excellent point. No one here, I don't think anybody on the board disagrees with you.
No. Yeah.
So people literally 5 houses away from me won't have this. I'll be in a special tax assessment district. I'll be receiving their water. I have to build a stormwater system that accommodates for their water. So where's the benefit?
So I can't claim there's a benefit. There are actually 2 areas subject to the 3-acre rule. It's Greystone and Southview. So you're actually one of 2.
Yes.
As it happens, Greystone has a homeowners association and is moving forward. So I don't know what benefit the Greystone residents see either.
No.
Yeah.
Or the less than 3-acre rule compliance obligations, what those people may see as benefit. So I couldn't describe a benefit when I think about how this plays out, in my thinking is sort of parallel Southview and Greystone, that at some point, there's a share of impervious surfaces that are public in terms of roadway, and a share of impervious surfaces that is not public, not part of the roadway. And if we treat the two developments comparably, the town as a whole pays for the impervious surfaces owned by the town, and the property owners pay. I don't actually know how they're gonna divide it up in Greystone.
And, oh, yeah.
I'm in Greystone,
Yeah.
yeah. Because that's their homeowners association. Do they do equal shares? Do they do it based on impermeable surface by grand list? I don't know, but those are the examples of things that they would have to wrestle with and that we would have to wrestle with similarly in Southview. I've also heard people in Southview say, well, if you put stormwater mitigation structures on my property, I'm impacted more than the people who don't have that. So is there some adjustment for that? I have no idea. I mean, those, it strikes me are the kind of details that we'd have to get through in a future process.
Yeah.
And I still can't explain the benefit. All I can explain is the obligation that's passed down from the legislature through the executive branch to us and to you.
Yeah. Next ups.
So it seems to me, again, David, that we want to know, are we talking, we had cause to mention this in an earlier meeting. If it were $0, it would be easy. For multiple millions, forget about it. So somewhere between 0 and multiple millions is like the feasible point. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
What is to get closer to actual numbers? What's the total project cost? What's the share of the town based on percent impermeable surface? What's the share of property owners? And then I think you'd have to have that conversation about what does it look like for the property owners, similar to
What's the
Greystone.
impact? Yeah, the physical impact.
But both physical impact and financial impact. I mean, if it were $5 per property, you go, whatever. If it were 100,000 per property, you'd say that's not gonna fly, right?
Yeah.
So I think the dollars matter.
The dollars matter,
Oh, yeah.
well, it's still not, it will never be fair, the way that the state's doing things.
Well, the benefit is outside of their property. It's
Right.
downstream.
Estimates are 75,000 or more per impervious acre. We've got
Per
10
acre.
Per impervious acre, and we have 10.5 or something. So this was a number given by the stormwater guy at South Burlington, and he said that's a pre-COVID number, and that's probably more now. And the finding firms to do construction is going to be very good.
You know, there was always Bard's idea, which is not, even though I'm not a hydrological engineer, it's not the stupidest idea I've heard. We've got a
Go to the
culvert that goes
source.
under the interstate. That's where all the water goes. Why not just put one structure there?
So you guys are starting to segue to the next agenda item, so before we go
No, no,
talking too much speculation about engineering, do we want to wrap up this and then invite Andres to come talk about the engineering piece?
Yes.
Is there anything else we want to hear from Terry, or anything else that Terry has to offer us?
I'll just quickly note on the previous point that, in terms of cost estimates, certainly Andres's design will heavily inform that. There can be great variability. So there's some value to the broader estimates per acre of impervious surface. But the design, the practices that can fit in some cases from our manual can often be far less expensive than others. It's just about a matter of, can those practices feasibly work for a site, or do you need to do something that costs more? So I think with regards to many other issues, once Andres has his, at least a preliminary design, he'll have a much better idea of that. And from the slides I noted, it looks like he's making progress on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Are we ready to move on? Sounds like, oh, June, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to ask if there's been any contact with VLCT, because I know that they were intending to put like an advocacy group together based on the fact that this process, there's a lot of concern and questions around the whole 3-acre rule. And if that hasn't been done, I'm thinking it would be a good idea for those towns affected to reach out, because it feels like there's still a lot of unanswered questions about the whole 3-acre rule in its inception.
We did initially email VLCT, I think back before the legislative session, because they had a spot on their website asking for feedback, and they said, okay, thanks for your interest, we'll get back to you. I never really heard back. I did email them after this question came up in a previous select board meeting after that. And I think the response was, oh yeah, we've been doing some testimony in the legislature, but I was envisioning they were gonna like reach out and try to get a bunch of people together. Didn't seem like that was their plan. So I could follow back up with them and see where they're at this point. I think they noted that a couple of Southview residents did testify. Paige, you might have been one of them. Yeah. So I think that they noted there were people from Richmond, but it would have been nice if they said, let's get a select board member there. So I'll follow up with them again to see if there's still opportunity.
All right.
Thank you. I was one of them that signed up, and I've never heard anything.
I'm looking at an email response I got on January 28th, which is somewhat dated. From Josh Hanford, Director of Intergovernmental Relations at VLCT, that said, and I had asked about this, he said, yes, this is still one of our top priorities. We had a VLCT advocacy chat yesterday and discussed the current situation. Are you a VLCT member? Did you get the advocacy chat info? You can ignore that. Also, we discussed Senator Chittenden's newly introduced 3-acre bill in our legislative report. And it talked about S24, which they're tracking, and then closes by saying, we are assessing the bill and planning on calling the group together that expressed interest in advocating for the 3-acre to discuss. I have not seen any further communication since then.
Thank you. That's more than I got. Thank you.
Ready to move on?
David, so I conclude that we should reach out again, maybe.
Yeah.
Check from you or Josh, the chair as town manager.
I'll send an email this week and copy David.
They've kind of said that they were going to, but that was a long time ago, and I don't know how the legislature is proceeding this year. This is typically a crossover, but a lot of bills seem not to have gotten much attention. So I don't know how they plan to address things like S24. Last I looked, it had not moved beyond committee and did not seem to have gotten a whole lot. I don't know, Terry, if you have any other comments about current state of S24.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that they're definitely honing in on the language. So, you know, I do fully expect that something will come out of it. It's just the final product. We'll see what it is. And they're working again with Michael O'Grady, the legislative counsel. So I don't have a sense of the exact timing, but they're often discussing it. It seems like every week. They're actually off this week. They have a break, I believe, but it's been quite active of late. It seems like multiple meetings almost every single week. So it is ongoing.
Thank you, Terry. June?
From what I remember when I read that, much of what is being proposed is really about kicking the can down the road, like extending the deadlines. And so if people are interested, reaching out to Senator Chittenden to say, this doesn't change the impact on private homeowners in a small percentage of private homeowners across the state. So encouraging them to also look at that 3-acre rule in general.
All right.
And June, if I'm correct, I mean, I think you're also alluding to sort of a cost benefit consideration for some of this, like it could be fairly expensive with fairly modest benefit. Not to put words in your mouth.
Yes, exactly right, which is why I'm interested in hearing what the engineer has to say.
Padres with us?
Yep.
Oh, I was looking on screen. Are we ready to move on? Sounds like we are.
Thank you, Terry.
Yes, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Come on up. I'm just gonna grab some water. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I can share the,
Show my slides.
really, let me, you send them in a power, no, it's all PDF?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
PDF. Yeah.
Yeah, then let me just make sure I find those. Last one here,
Imagine Terry gets rid of many meetings where people are happy to see him these days. It's gotta get old. It's tough. Chance. So seldom. Grace, you just skipped you. You just like.
Really?
In there, so.
It's pretty obvious.
Would you like a maple
Smell this?
I'm good. Thank you, though.
Give it to him right as he's ready to talk. Saltines with it.
All right, ready to go?
when you are, yep. Yeah, okay, one of those. Thanks.
All right, so thanks again for having me. I'm Andres Teresa. I've talked to the board before. So I'm with Watershed Consulting, and I'm going to be trying to fill in some of the gaps that you were talking about in terms of the costs. I know that it's hard discussing this in abstract, and I think when we get to the end of our phase of work, I think you'll have a lot of that detail that you need to really evaluate kind of what's going on with this. So we've just for recap, we've prepared a few slides here really just to describe kind of the progress that we've had to date on this project, and kind of the next steps moving forward. And then once I go through these, we've set up a couple different things for the community members. There's what's called a story map. It's kind of like a website. It's got a lot of background information on the 3-acre rule. For folks that are interested in that, we'll also be posting all of our, deliverables on there. And then there's also a homeowner survey that we have, which we can broadcast that out to folks if they wanted to give us some feedback. We've gotten some really good feedback so far from different homeowners. And we want to continue to get that. So we kind of have a Google Forms that, people can respond to if they have additional feedback for us. So I'll just launch into these slides here. So, the 3-acre rule is regulating within the Lake Champlain watershed, also Medford-Magog watershed. Essentially, it's because Southview and, Richmond flows into the Winooski, and then Winooski flows into Lake Champlain. Go ahead. So the slide that you're looking at here, the yellow boundary is the 3-acre boundary. So one of the first things that we did when we got involved in the project was working with Terry and the state to solidify what is the jurisdictional 3-acre boundary of this site. And it wasn't exactly clear when we first started with this. The 3-acre stuff gets even more complicated when there's older permits involved. And for this site, there's, there were 2 other additional permits, Mary Drive, the other permit. So, and then this permit. So at first there was some question about whether this was much larger, and it's gotten smaller. So we've spent the time to kind of work with DEC on that. We've also spent the time to really carefully map the jurisdictional impervious surface. So what's shown on this map there's 2 different colors of impervious surface. When I talk about that, we're talking about roads, driveways, rooftops. So those are the roads are in blue, and then the
driveway and rooftop impervious is in red. So that allows us to understand that the total impervious jurisdictional acreage is 10.35. 6 acres of that is 6.6 acres of that is privately owned. And then the town of Richmond, with the roads, is about 3.75. So this may change slightly, before we're all said and done with this, but this is just cut in terms of if you want to start thinking about cost share and that type of thing. This is one way that it's been done quite a bit.
So literally just by like percentage, like X 6.6 is, whatever that is.
60% of, yeah.
A bit over 60% of the total.
Right.
I had a really just a simple question though. It says
Yep.
NHD streams. What's NHD?
So NHD is the National Hydrography Data Set, I believe. So those are that's a layer that is the blue lines that kind of come down towards the highway are where there's mapped stream resources, and we didn't map those, but that's like more of a geographic data set that we bring in. And that actually, it's important, glad you mentioned that, because one of the questions about trying to manage the water at the 89, which is a really good thought. And actually we think a lot, we always think about these types of things.
Chip points, yeah.
Making, where's the water going, trying to make it as easy and cheap to do. The problem with, on this site, trying to manage the water down there, there's two problems. One is that at that point where the water is collected, it is within this blue line area. And those blue lines are basically regulated stream courses at that point. And so the state would not allow us to put a treatment structure within those blue line areas because they're already considered at that point like waters of the state.
Problem solved.
So it becomes much more complicated, right? I mean, the other problem with it is, we always trying to keep the area to the smallest possible. Really, it translates directly into money a lot of times. I mean, there's an economy too when you can easily pick up and manage a large area, but that would also require picking up and managing a lot of water from the hill that we wouldn't otherwise have to manage. So that would make it unnecessarily large. So, there's a couple problems, but good thought, but we're going to really try to focus in on these smaller areas and do the minimum that we have to do.
I'm just going to observe when we use the phrase unnecessarily large, it would be ostensibly through the lens of the 3-acre stormwater rule, not through the lens of a planet.
Through the lens of the 3-acre stormwater rule, we only have to manage a certain.
Well, yes, but that's my
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah.
when people say it's not fair, well, yeah, it's not fair. Like
Yeah.
if this were less than 3 acres, it would just keep going on
Right.
and it wouldn't be caught in the lens, if you will, of the 3-acre stormwater rule. So
Right.
we're not talking about stormwater across the entire hillside. We're talking about the stormwater that is the focus of the 3-acre
Correct.
stormwater rule, which is just sort of foundational.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yep. So the work that we've completed, so I talked about the kind of the first bullet, solidifying the boundary. The second thing that's really key is understanding the soil conditions. So we're on site with a driller. We collected several soil borings. And so now we have a good idea of what the soil characteristics are up there. And the soils are really important because the soils also translate directly to money. So the better the soils are generally a lot cheaper to manage stormwater. And that's really probably the best news that I have to bring tonight is that the soils in some areas are really, really good.
Yeah, it's sandy up
There's
there.
gravel and sand. So that's going to make things a lot cheaper than if it was just clay, because then we're
Clay
stuck
area.
with larger, more complicated
But you've had mud.
structures.
Mhm.
So, and then the final bullet is what's called this disconnection analysis. And so whenever we've done any of these, we always look to see what is being passively managed on the site now. So there's treatment that's occurring just by natural
Mhm.
vegetation, by running water through buffers and natural areas and spreading it out. So we kind of do this in two different stages. We look at it on the desktop right now because we can't really see all the, the lawns. But we look at the topography and we look at the way that the houses are oriented. We kind of do a first pass in terms of where, according to the state manual, where we can just justify that there's currently this treatment that's occurring. And that's really a lot of what's around the homes themselves, from the rooftops of the homes and also from the driveways. So we've done that, and I have a slide that shows that. But those are really the key things that we've done so far. So just to get into some more detail, you can go ahead, Josh, if you, yeah. So just kind of describing this, these two workflows here. So they're taking the topography, the contouring, and then also the existing infrastructure, the culverts, the swales along the road. That really guides us towards where we would most likely put a best management practice. So something that's going to treat the stormwater. And then looking at the infiltration rate, the way that water can be absorbed into the ground, and also the type of soil. We look at the type of practice. So like I was saying, when we have good soils, we're going to be looking at cheaper, simpler structures. And so kind of looking at the location and the type really feeds into the amount of impervious area treated, and then ultimately the compliance with the rule. All right.
Question for you.
Yeah.
What kinds of quantities of water are you talking about? I mean, any idea yet? I mean, it's not flowing over the surface exactly, but what's your order of magnitude?
So the way that the 3-acre rule works is it's basically our target is to manage half an inch of runoff in 24 hours. So that's generating, it's tens of thousands of gallons of water, right?
Sure.
But that's our target. And so that can be spread out over the whole site, or we can treat an inch of runoff from half the site or anywhere in between. So not everybody, and that's where fairness issues, right? Not everybody ends up with something, on their lawn. Ideally, nobody ends up with something on their lawn. We can do everything that we need to do within the right of way. I mean, that's where we start, because that's usually the best thing in terms of long-term maintenance too. You have to think about, it's easy enough to maintain something that's just adjacent to the road.
Thank you.
So this is where the soil borings were. So we had 6 borings planned. The green dots are where we actually were, and we ended up doing our boring. So we were able to do half of them, mainly just because of concerns about existing infrastructure, but also access for our rig, our drill rig, because we were doing this with snow cover on the ground. So it's a little hard to get into some of the places that we originally wanted to, but where we ended up doing the soils work, boring 1 and 2 were where we saw really good sand and gravel with no indication of seasonal like groundwater very deep in the soil. So those areas were really good. Where we did boring 4, we had shallow groundwater table and then some sand, but also silt and clay.
Well, where are we here?
Are you on mute?
Associate 1, 2, 4 green. So that's the key on the left. It says TP 1 and 2.
Yeah.
That's 1 and 2, and then 4, and then 3 through 6 are red because they haven't been bored, right?
Right. Yeah, correct. Yep.
About halfway down Joan Avenue. Depending
Yes.
which end you're coming from.
Right. And this, the background, I know it's hard to see on the colors here, but just for interest. So, the state, or it's actually the NRCS, there's mapping that exists for all the soil types that exist for the whole state. So that's usually like the first pass, and you can see where it's green and yellow, where kind of right where 1 and 2 are. Those are mapped as being the highest quality, well-drained soils, and where it's kind of red hatching over in that area, it's actually mapped as being poor soils. So it matched up pretty well with what, was the mapping suggested. And this is all part of the whole process of the state 3-acre rule requires us to do this, because we need to basically have this foundational work to where when we get to an end solution, we have the backup to show that, this is why we're choosing to do or what we're planning to do. Yep,
Do you take into consideration where wells and septic are?
definitely, yeah. Yeah,
Because the number 4.
yep,
Just south of that, I guess, or down south of that, or I don't know, maybe it's west.
okay, yeah, down page.
There's
Yep.
a septic field that is for 3 homes
Yeah.
that feed into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's really part of the next, now that we kind of have this done, that will be definitely something we would look at. For example, we wouldn't want to be introducing a lot of water into the ground,
There's septic.
you know, right up, right, or in an area where that septic water might be interfering down, you know, vice versa kind of thing. So yes. Okay, so then just to describe this whole disconnection analysis with this cross section here of the roof, this is just that idea that I was talking about where in a lot of cases, there's already the manual, the rules that we have to meet are already being met just by the fact that there's flat, nice grass area really existing there. And we just need to be able to prove to the state, we need to highlight those areas on a map and then quantitatively, you know, tally up those areas. So what that's going to involve is really taking a close look at this. So I was describing that we've kind of done this on the computer, but our next step is to actually go around the neighborhood once the snow melts and really document every single home and every single roof leader in order to really create these maps of where all these disconnection areas exist. Because what we can do is if we total up all these areas and we say, you know, 1.2 acres of impervious is already being managed through disconnection, then we basically just pull that out of the equation.
And the total.
Out of the total. It goes away.
From 10.35 to some lesser figure.
Right. I mean, a very crude way to do it is if it's 10, say 10 acres, we have to manage 5 because we really only have to manage half of the total to an inch. That's the best way to do it. And then out of that 5, we can even say it's 1, you know, then we can subtract another acre or whatever it is disconnected. So then we're really just left with the 4. Sorry. So,
I think.
Could you get under 3 and take it out of the program
Yeah.
altogether? No, wait, seriously, if you find that it's less than 3 that's not being treated, the permit doesn't apply?
no, it
Okay.
applies.
I was
But
like,
we,
there's a route.
I mean, there are some sites like in Charlotte, I'm not suggesting because it's not going to happen
Okay.
here, but there are some sites where the entire site we found is already disconnected.
Oh.
And they're done. They're still get a permit, but there's no improvements necessary.
Structures, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is part of, well, you'll probably get to it.
Page.
I have 2 questions. So, can we do anything ahead of time, like before you come out and see us? Or after the fact that will bring that number, you know?
Yeah. You can after the
Rain
fact.
barrels or,
Right.
you know, are you gonna give us suggestions on that or whoever visits?
We
or-
will.
Okay. Okay, second question is, so say you come to my house and my lot has actually a unique, it has a big swale in front of it that when it rains, the water sits in that and then permeates into the ground, which is exactly what the state says is the
Yeah.
best treatment.
Right.
So that's what all my water does. So if I were looked at individually and said, well, you're doing everything, but I'm still gonna be held accountable for everyone else in the neighborhood. You know, so then how do you divvy that up? If like I'm doing everything and I wouldn't have to do anything, but then I still have to pay for everybody else? Like, I mean, it just.
Yeah, I know.
Those are some of the issues that, in my opinion, the state
Yep.
really should have clearly outlined.
I understand. And I'm not suggesting that I necessarily agree with this, but I've heard this argument a lot. And somebody could say, well, you use the road to get to your home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but sort of homes in this permit area that don't have to do this. They use those roads. They like, there's houses that literally on Southview Drive and Westall Drive that are not part of the 3 acre. They use the roads to get
I
to their
know,
homes,
yeah.
so. Yeah,
Well,
I know, it's not
Yeah.
your rule and everything on this.
But to document, but we will want to document exactly that type of thing. So when we
Yeah.
come out, we'll take photos of it, we'll take a GPS and we'll actually put that into the calculation that,
So do you have suggestions and things we can do to get the numbers down, rain barrels?
so rain barrels, or just for an example, if somebody has a roof leader that comes down and say it's splashing out onto the driveway and we see a really easy opportunity, geez, you can just make an extension and put it around the back of your home, around the side, so that it goes on the ground. Yeah, like we'll make those suggestions.
Okay.
So I don't think there's anything that you should do ahead of time, but we'll let the homeowners all know.
Okay.
We'll schedule, a couple of days and we'll come out, and then if you're around or whatever.
Okay.
Because it's always good to have like somebody that obviously lives there and has
Yeah.
seen this before, be like, oh, this is what happens.
Yeah. I was just hoping like we could just buy both grain barrels and this.
Well, I mean, we have been talking about, like there's rain barrels, there's also things like a rain garden. If people want to do that anyway,
Yes.
I mean, it will certainly help.
Okay.
And it will knock it down.
Right.
And so, the resources here that we're gonna show, I mean, that's the way to get us. You guys, anybody that's interested in that can let us know.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
The survey
Just
as
stand up from my
well.
office.
Hello.
Yeah.
We have a homeowner survey as well,
Yeah,
where
it's like-
definitely that kind of information about your site, and like your swale or any other infrastructure that you have. And then any openness, to incorporating a rain barrel or roof leaders, that's definitely a great place to
Okay. We have a
share that.
email list now of the
Yeah.
3 affected properties, so I'll send
Oh,
it
good.
out to everyone and have them, if they want to fill out the form, get that done.
Perfect. Was there another question?
I was skipping ahead, so
Oh.
I'll wait till you get to the next.
Okay. All right, so next, please.
And it's just to explain the
Yep.
yellow here, so it looks like there's a bunch of driveways that are disconnected, which
Right.
must have to do with how the slope works and the soil. So
Right.
if it drains to the side and it
Exactly.
disperses, you take it off the map.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Yeah. And the reason that all the, there's, you can see there's like a couple pieces of rooftop that we have, and that's really just, it was what we could see remotely. But there's gonna be a lot, when we actually go out, there's gonna be a lot of those rooftops that are blue that will probably turn yellow. And so then we'll be done. And it's tedious and a little granular to do this, but in the end, it makes a lot of sense to do it, because it's, it's worth it.
What does the yellow mean?
Yellow means that it's essentially treated. It's the water sheeting off the sides and it's kind of going into the grass. And what we're telling the state is that we don't need to worry about that.
It's impervious, but
Anything
disconnected.
yellow reduce that.
What dirt driveways? So these are dirt driveways and that's what the yellow is?
No,
It could be that
impervious.
The water's.
Could be paved or dirt. Yeah, it's just indicating that based on our first pass, the water flow is kind of adequately being managed.
Okay, it just
we-
looks like driveways in some cases. Got it.
Yeah.
It is driveways, yeah.
If I may to clarify, so I think what Andres was getting at is that, there's different parameters that have to be met for an area to be considered disconnected appropriately, like he said, based on slope, leaders, stuff like that. One of those things is if an area is narrower than 10 feet, then it can be disconnected at an equivalent length. So that's why you see initially that a lot of the driveways are considered disconnected, because they're narrow enough and they sheet off onto the side. So sort of why you see that pattern ahead of time.
Yeah, and
Just a follow-up question. So does that suggest that people's driveways should be 10 feet or less? I'm just thinking what I would be thinking if I lived there.
well, yeah,
Move the road.
According to zoning, they have to be.
Only in Southview.
So no.
you are able to reduce impervious surface. Like that's just as good as treating it. The state will allow that, or narrowing, or whatever you would want to do.
But if the narrowing, if I understood your comment, though, if it's less than 10 feet, it sort of gets a pass?
Makes it easier.
We do differently.
Okay.
Makes it easier to disconnect.
So disconnection is considered a stormwater treatment practice still, like it's considered non-structural, but we're saying it's treated like through a practice still, rather than like it's disappearing. So we'd still be saying that it's treated if it was less than 10 feet, but if it was more than 10 feet, the disconnection standard it has to meet would be different.
The state, the rules get pretty convoluted, to say the least. When you, you know, when you
Been
get a
that way for a
larger,
while.
when you get an impervious that's even wider, and the length that you would have to justify for the management gets longer, and has to meet a particular slopes. And then when you're on the side of a hill, a mountain, it's hard to find those long lengths. So
We really didn't cover this in Schoolhouse Rock.
can't remember. Oh yeah, the next slide is, I think, just the resources, right? So as I was describing kind of the next steps, we're going to be doing the disconnection analysis in the field. We're going to be working on selecting the practices, and really those are going to be dictated by where that good soil is. We're going to come back and we're going to do actually field infiltration tests. So we couldn't do that in the winter, but where some key areas are, we're going to put a meter in the ground. We're actually going to measure the percolation rate through the soil. We need to do that to kind of start designing a practice. And then our goal is really to be able to generate a preliminary design that we can just start sharing with people, understanding that we have to start somewhere, and there may be a lot of comment, but we're just going to put it out. We'll put a cost to it, and that will be kind of the basis for discussion and feedback from folks. So that's really what our goal is, to have that as soon as we can. We're a little bit held up by the snow, but it's going to be something that we really want to have in the spring, because we're trying to kind of keep this moving quickly, with the understanding that, a lot of the money needs to be spent through the ARPA later in the summer, September, but then also people want to just kind of get to the end point. So we'll plan to have that, at some point this spring, where I think that would be the most appropriate time to come back and have another discussion. So the resources that we've had, I think, are shown on the next slide. So on the left there's the project page for homeowners that we've set up. And if you follow that link, you can actually see, you should be able to see the page. I don't know, Josh, if you wanted to click through that or not, or just let folks click through. It doesn't matter.
Well, and let me also, I think I can show people where they can find that on the website.
Okay.
Well, it's right on I left it. So if you go here and you go down into news, there's a stormwater permit section. And under Southview, we have the story map and the survey. So
Okay,
there's
great.
links right here, so you don't have to go digging into the meeting. It's, and there's stormwater spot. So where do you want me to click into first? The survey?
You can click in click into the story map if you'd like. All right, so this is just, for folks that just want the kind of the background information, this just has, and this is just the PDF exported, so it looks different when you actually, click in. It's more of like a website, but it just gives an introduction about why we're doing this, links to the general permit, kind of a description of the 3-acre rule and why the 3-acre rule exists, what it regulates, some example sites of like other 3-acre sites. And then as you keep getting into it, it's got some more Southview specific stuff here. There's the map that we just looked at. And then the homeowner survey, and then the soil testing. So, and once we have a working plan, we'll post it up here as well, for folks to take a look at.
So you've done a bunch of these so far
Yeah.
for subdivisions?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your sense of, I'm not going to quote you on this, but just, between nobody and nobody, what's your sense of Southview's impact versus some other area that you've looked at? high, low.
Impact
Or,
or,
well,
or potential cost exposure or
Yeah, I guess
cost exposure.
impact on them.
Well, I think that the soil conditions here really
Are helpful.
will
Yeah.
help.
I thought so.
I mean, there's kind of pluses and minuses. So it's very steep, which is a big minus
Mhm.
in terms of the ability. But the
Mhm.
soil really will help tremendously kind of keep the cost down and will keep the structures really small.
Mhm.
So, you know, we've been working on ones everywhere from, I was describing in Charlotte where it's totally flat and they have to do nothing. And then there's a couple in Barry where we've had, you know, 7 or 8 or,
Yeah.
you know, 7 or 8, you know, structures,
Mhm.
not super complex, but, you know, costly structures, all being able to kept in the right of way or drainage easement areas. But it really, I don't think it's to that extreme and it's not to the
Mhm.
Charlotte. So I think it's kind of maybe right in the middle.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
Are swales, you know, across the slope, are those one feature that's useful?
it is useful.
Okay.
We can't use a swale just as it is
Right,
for full treatment,
has to
but
go someplace, but.
it's got to go someplace. But yes, it is,
Okay.
it is helpful
Mhm.
to bring the stormwater from one place to another.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at the survey.
Sure.
Real quick.
Yeah.
At least, so there's, is this the survey?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and there's a link to the actual survey to fill out. Where do they fill it out?
Right. So
Where do you want me to go? Sorry.
no, it's okay. Just, I mean, it's just recording kind of the basic information and then if you keep going down, you know, it's just really describing kind of like basic questions for people. Describing kind of what the infrastructure is. Does your house have roof drains or gutters?
We're actually 9 minutes.
And I mean, it's set up to where somebody can answer all the questions or some of them, but also just put any feedback for us in kind of paragraph form or whatever. So it's really, we've done this before and you know, it is surprising, but you know, you really do sometimes get some good useful information where people are saying, well, you know, in front of my house, this is like, I see this huge river, you know, occasionally, you know, flowing through. It's like stuff that we might not really have picked up on.
Mhm. You hit it on the
Or I have water in my basement every time it rains, like that is good information for us.
And is it safe to say, just based on both this project and other projects, that one of the sort of preferred approaches is try to put structures in the right of way to avoid some of the issues with easements, et cetera? And then related to that, are we clear what the right of way width is up there? Because that's a consideration as well, right?
It is a consideration. I'm not clear about that. I would like, we kind of started that discussion a little bit and now we really need to get into that, but I know that I'm gonna have to circle back with your folks to dig into that a little bit more. Yeah.
I'll just have a footnote to this. In other projects in town, people are often surprised at how big the right of way is.
Okay.
Like, it's not where the road ends typically.
Right.
I think the biggest one that I heard was on Route 2, which was I think a 4-rod right of way. And that's a bit larger. And I think a rod is what, 16.5 feet. So I think for the town, it's usually a 3-rod.
Yeah.
That's probably about where it is. So, but it will extend 5 to 10-ish feet beyond the edge of the road at times.
Right.
Thank you.
So that's all I have. Does anybody have any more questions or?
No, this is great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Yep. Sure. Thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing more.
Yeah.
Causing just a little bit of gutter elbows.
Next, we have consideration of approving a vendor to renew the stormwater permit 6117-9010R, the Farr Commercial Complex and High Meadows Condominium.
Let me take it.
Sure.
Okay, so as we talked about back when we first started talking about the Southview and 3 acre sites, we noted that there are other sites in town that are less than 3 acres. You'll probably remember Hidden Pines and Mary Drive were combined at one point with Southview, and then we broke them back out again because each of them individually is less than 3 acres, and the permitting requirements are far less expensive. So another one of those sites that we have is the Farr Commercial Complex and Meadows Condominiums, less than 3 acres. It's up for a permit renewal, which requires a bit more mapping and engineering. The quote from Watershed Engineering is $3,500 of engineering. There likely wouldn't be any additional construction. It's been permitted and inspected for years now. And then I think the permit fee is about $240, I think, per year. So in both Hidden Pines and Mary Drive, the board made the decision to continue to operate these under the town without any co-permittees. The cost to distribute the costs would probably be more expensive than the actual permit fees and engineering fees. So this would get us down the road to start doing the engineering for this, and we would come back for notice of intent and permit submittal.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve entering into an agreement with Watershed Consulting to provide the engineering services necessary to renew the Farr Commercial Complex and High Meadows Condominium Stormwater Permit 6117-9010.R at an amount not to exceed $3,500.
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Bart. Any further discussion?
Would that they were also cheap.
Yeah. Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
David, aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have consideration of approving a liquor license. Stone's Throw Pizza has applied for a first-class liquor license and an outdoor consumption permit. Their paperwork is included in the packet.
So a first-class license is beer and wine on site. I'm just saying that for people in the audience.
David, if it would be helpful, I'd move to approve first-class liquor license and outdoor consumption permit for Pine Martin LLC doing business as Stone's Throw Pizza.
Thank you, Bard.
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
And David, aye. Motion carries. License is approved.
The last one, right?
Update on the structure of the community justice centers in Chittenden County.
Just the whole state.
So we talked about this a couple months ago, where the funding was being changed from the Department of Corrections to the Attorney General's office for the grants that come in to fund and support the community justice centers. One of the directives is to have only one community justice center per county. The town managers in Chittenden County that utilize the 4 different community justice centers in Chittenden County wrote to the Attorney General asking if they could essentially keep things status quo for a year and then give us some time to work on how would we still support local community justice centers. Right now we have it's Essex, South Burlington, and Williston, as well as Burlington itself. So there's been a letter that came from the Attorney General, and I'll just read an excerpt that I think summarizes it pretty well. For FY26, the Attorney General will award grants to all 4 community justice centers for pre-charge diversion in Chittenden County, provided the legislature appropriates funds for this work. During FY26, we will work with the representatives from your municipalities and Burlington to ensure transition to one grantee the following year. For FY27, the Attorney General's office will incorporate pre-charge diversion into a full array of AGO funding services to one grantee for the county. Because the Burlington CJC is the current provider of the court diversion and pretrial services, as well as providing pre-charge services under the DOC funding, we anticipate that the Burlington CJC will be that grantee. The Burlington CJC will work to develop a plan in collaboration with you to embed staff in your municipality's police departments and include countywide representation, including law enforcement, on an advisory board. All providers statewide will work with our office on the development of policies and procedures for Act 180. So I think, given everything that's happening with what Act 180, I view this as fairly good news. It keeps things status quo for a year, gives us about a little over a year to try to figure out how to continue to provide similar services locally.
Jay?
Mr. Chairman, nonetheless, and I know I'm not yelling at Josh or the chairman or anything. Nothing I say is going to accomplish a darn thing because the people who could change it aren't listening. But we've all had experience with services that are meant to be county-wide but are headquartered in Burlington, essentially winding up serving Burlington. And I'm extremely upset about this. I've emailed various people, I've gotten nothing back. But given the size of our county, if they're going to one per county, I mean, I actually don't know if they're doing one for Essex County, one for Caledonia County, one for Chittenden County. But I think given the size of our county, two CJCs at a minimum would have been the way to go. If we're going to accomplish, I mean, the whole point of having CJCs is to divert things from the normal police course of action. And by doing this, we're basically saying, you know what? Never mind. We'll see how it plays out in practice, but I'm not happy about this.
Good point.
Well, I'll certainly keep you guys updated. I know they're gonna work, I think, at least with the 3 managers from Essex, Williston, and South Burlington as they proceed. So I'll provide regular updates to the select board as I hear that and provide feedback to that group as they continue to plan.
So, David, thinking if this is a fait accompli, it's that this is the path, it would seem that the questions where the areas of interest will be to ensure access and responsiveness to residents throughout the county, for us specifically Richmond, and how that would occur and how we would know if it did or did not occur. I know you'll recall that, or at least people here will recall at the table, that we've had conversations about referrals and access to community justice center. So it's kind of a workflow between the referrals and responsiveness, sort of end to end, if you will. And I think it bears our attention as they make this transition. How do we ensure that we do not lose access for the referrals or outcomes from community justice and restorative justice?
Thank you, Bard. Jean? Jean Haskin?
Yeah, I had just a question about how do we know how many people from Richmond actually receive services through this organization?
I know that there's reporting from the CJC. I don't have that at my fingertips. I think we post someone online, but they do keep track and they do have reporting. I just don't have that right in front of me.
Okay, can we get that posted on the town's website somewhere so that we know?
Yeah, and Gene, one of the goals that we've had since I've been on the select board and probably before that is to get our town police, whoever they might be, to enthusiastically work with CJCs and see that we make full use of them. And that has not always been the case, but it's something that is a priority.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, in looking at the budgets, I was comparing Richmond's budget to Heinsberg's budget, and we're allocating $15,000 plus for the CJC, where Heinsberg is only allocating $6,000. Why such a big difference?
So we actually, up until this fiscal year, which is we're in FY25, did not contribute anything to the Community Justice Center. It was funded with a grant. They went to Williston, and then the town of Williston made up the gap between what the grant covered and the full cost of funding the Community Justice Center, as well as in-kind donations, in-kind support such as office space and equipment like that. Prior or during the FY25 budget cycle, the town manager of Williston reached out to both Richmond and Heinsberg with a couple of ways to sort of look at having Richmond and Heinsberg fund the CJC. For forget the exact structure, but I know there were two different models. The select board looked at it, chose one of those models, knowing that we should be paying part of our fair share here. I don't know what process Heinsberg went through or which model they chose, or if they even chose to fund it fully. I think that with my recollection is we picked one of the models that Williston proposed and we decided to fund it fully in the budget. And then for this year, we've just included that same amount because in this year's budgeting cycle, we will consider anybody how much money they would need if they were even to get the grant. So we just kept it sort of status quo for FY26 budget.
Bart?
And I'd observe that the future state is perhaps then even less certain. So if it's going to be one community justice center, what's the financial cost and method of support for that? I'd say beyond next year, that's an uncertain question, right?
And I also just want to reiterate or make sure it's clear that I think, what is it, $15,000? It's not like we were getting a bill from the Community Justice Center. It was a request and the board chose to fulfill that request. The board could have said no money or somewhere in between, and we would still get the same services from the Community Justice Center.
So being listed under contracted services, it's not like we're paying for a specific contract?
The reason it's under contracted services, Gene, is because of the split that we made a year or so ago. To say what donations we're giving to outside organizations that are substantially in support of the mission of various Richmond town departments versus the ones that are more true charities. So for example, the money that goes to Mount Mansfield Community Television for which is basically an in-kind donation for the meeting services they provide, and the Chittenden Unit on Special Investigations, which is the cross-county team that works on sex crimes and things like that. That's also under the police budget. It's again an optional contribution. Most towns don't always pay their share, but we're paying for that one. So is this a contracted service that everybody should be paying for? It falls under that in our budget because of that split between true charities and things that support Richmond missions, but it's not something that we have on the dotted line saying, in return for this money, we will get this.
Okay. Okay, well, that answered my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Gene. Patty, go ahead.
Patty, you may be muted. We're not hearing you.
Or gigged.
Patty, if you're still there, you're muted.
There we go.
There.
Sorry, I had a hard time. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to say a couple things. First of all, I completely agree with Jay. What makes this community restorative justice work is the volunteers that from Richmond who serve on these councils and work with the victims and the people that have created harm. And as we heard at our last forum, the satisfaction of victims is if they go through the restorative justice process with something like 80%, if they're satisfied, as opposed to when they go through the criminal justice system, it's about 40%. This is a wonderful service that is very local. It's about restoring the community, our community, Richmond community. I'd like to also say, so we need to figure this out. You know, we may have to come up with something different if it's going to be, this, huge countywide thing. I mean, we have some experience with the community outreach that is stationed, kind of seems like a station in Burlington. It's very difficult to get services out here to us. So I have a feeling it's going to be the same. I want to just say that since we joined with the Heinsberg Police Department, we have tremendous we have tremendous participation with the CJCs. I've talked with the director, and she just said we've done our officers are amazing, and their follow through is amazing with victims and offenders. I know our one Richmond police officer is very, very active in the CJC. So we're very fortunate that our police officers see the benefit of this this organization. So I'm pleased about that. But I suppose the thing that I would want the select board to think about doing, and I don't know if this would be a motion, but I think that that the town of Richmond should be in touch with our legislator at least to say that they would like to see the CJCs funded for this year, this transition year, and because the legislature is going to have to do that somehow between moving the responsibility from corrections to the Office of the Attorney General. That money slipped out of the budget this year. It is not in Governor Scott's budget. So somehow we got to get that in, or it just sort of falls apart. This amazing organization that's done so much good to keep people out of the criminal justice system and keep all of us safer because of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Gretchen, go ahead.
Thanks. I can't find the thing that does the facial.
This works.
Okay. So I'd just like to say I agree with both Patty and Jay. One of my big concerns is consolidating it in Burlington. Is it going to turn out to be kind of like we partner with Howard Mental Health, but yet when police call them, it's kind of hard to find somebody when needed. And, are we going to be kind of pushed to the sides because Burlington has such a great need? And this is a great program. It's a great community program, keeps people out of the courts and the criminal justice system. And we need programs like this. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Yep.
David, I just observed that one of the challenges the Howard Center faces, and David, if I think I'm correct in saying the designated agencies statewide have significant vacancies.
They do.
And so if I recall, it's like 25% of the positions are vacant. So for some of these organizations, it's not just, Burlington is where the priorities are. They literally don't have enough people to respond to everything. So I surmise that those vacancies are impacting their ability to respond in a way that they'd like to.
Very much so. And 25% overall vacancy, but a lot of those vacancies are direct staff. So, I mean, we have divisions where more than half the staff are vacant.
And as a result, service delivery
doesn't happen.
Bennington is
far
particularly
less.
hard hit.
Or worse.
Bennington has like 2 case managers now, and they've got 11 positions, or it was something scary like that.
Yeah. And it's getting worse, not better. Patty, go ahead.
Wanted to also give you guys another, ask you if you do another action, which is Kristen Lee McSweeney is under the purview or whatever she's hired by the town of Williston, even though we all pitch in. And in order for her to come to a meeting like this, you need to ask their town manager permission to have her come and speak with us. And I would appreciate if you might have in a future meeting, come and speak with us and maybe help us know, what we can do to advocate and potentially how we might, what her thoughts are about how we move forward.
Good thought. Thank you, Patty. Are we ready to move on? Sounds like we are. So this next one should be quick. Consideration of approving the 2025 certificate of highway mileage.
So you might remember this from 2 weeks ago.
There's a story.
So I screwed up. And like my dad says, if it was a snake, it would have bit me. As it says right here, State Highway 14.327. So we needed to add the 0.033 here for added mileage, which was noted down here in part 2 in the comment section. I thought the comment was all we needed to do. And when I sent the certificate back into the state, they said, hey, dummy, there's a line here that says State
That's a
Highway.
technical term.
Yeah, I couldn't really understand what they were saying even then. So I added that in, updated the certificate, and all the numbers should be right. And hopefully we'll get this submitted correctly this time. And apologies for the error last week.
Dude,
You got to make a mistake. It might as well be a little one.
The state's highway mileage.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the 2025 certificate of highway mileage. This approval will replace the incomplete certificate that was approved at the February 18th, 2025 meeting when I was stuck in an airport. Leave off that last part.
Thank you, Jay.
Is Bart, I will second that.
Thank you, Bard. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, I.
Jay, I.
And David, I. Motion carries. Which airport were you stuck in?
Well, depends on who you at. Providence, LA's, and then Montreal.
Oh, well, if you're gonna get stuck at airports, those
I
are,
actually got halfway between the two and got turned around at one point.
oh, wow.
Good times.
You weren't on that jet that flipped over, I guess.
No, but that was part of why they shut. I was supposed to go through Toronto.
Right.
They shut Toronto down, and I had to wait the entire day to get a flight directly to Montreal, and
Huh.
then that one left crazy late.
I had a flight from Newark to Burlington once, and the flight had to go back to Newark because it was too snowy to land in Burlington. But only after they flew over the airport and turned. So I could see my car, but I had to go back to Newark.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, boy.
That's when you need a parachute.
Yeah.
They returned for the braking action. It was Neil.
Lovely Newark, New Jersey.
Well, the worst thing is I'm back in the Caribbean, but I can't do anything with the extra day I've been given because every 2 hours I get told, no, don't come to the airport yet. Come 2 hours later. Come 2 hours later.
Oh,
So I can't go anywhere. I have to stay.
Next, we have consideration of approving changes to the discretionary funding policy.
You skipped over highway codes and standards.
Next, we have consideration of adopting highway codes and standards. I did, I didn't cross it out.
So
I just considered it.
V-Trans recently reached out to me to ask that we make a small change, and let me actually pull up something here to make it a visual aid here for a second. So the board adopted this certificate on July 15th, 2019. At the time, we filled everything in, we dated it at the bottom, we had the select board sign it, everything was great. And didn't hear anything from the state until recently when they said that this section here needed to be filled in for date of adoption. And it's a little misleading because as you read this, it says the standards are minimums, municipalities have construction standards, specifications in place that meet or exceed the minimum standards, indicate adoption date, and include as Appendix C. So I think at the time we all said, well, we don't have that. We don't have an Appendix C. We don't have to put a date in there. The state is saying they want us to put the date that we adopted this certificate in there. So I said, okay, fine. But as we started to look at this, Jim Cota from the state would like us to re-examine Section 5, which if you scroll down here, has to deal with roadway construction standards. We had noted that we had gravel road shall have a 6-inch thick gravel subbase with an additional 6 inches on top course. The state, Jim said that usually they go about 15 inches. And I talked to Pete and he said, yeah, for new roads, that's where we would be. I think when we filled this out 6 years ago, Pete was looking at that as sort of like what's existing conditions on some of the roads, and some of them probably are 6. Where he goes, yeah, if we substantially reconstruct or build a brand new road, we would do 15 inches, maybe more. FEMA might look at this. I don't know if they always do, but if they ever looked at that and we only had 6 and we rebuilt it at 15, they might say, oh, you only can do 6. So we added 15 into that. And these do have implications for paving grants and for the structures grant. So we got a paving grant it was $200,000 recently. And the match goes from 70-30 to 80-20 when you have this adopted. We got 80-20. And our last structures grant, it goes 80-20 without adoption and 90-10 with adoption. So, and we also had 90-10 in the last one that we did for that in FY18. So even though we didn't have that adoption date filled in, we were still getting the favorable splits on the grants. So I bring this to you with that update, those two updates, the date and the gravel roads as far as the sub base for consideration of approval.
David, this is Bart. I'd like to move to adopt the town road and bridge standards as presented.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Calling for a vote on the motion, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
And David, aye. Motion carries. Now we will talk about consideration of approving changes to the discretionary funding policy.
Stick with show and tell here.
Of what the previous.
There's like a thickness, but there's no spec on what that material does.
So this is our discretionary funding policy that we send out in around August to any nonprofit or any nonprofit that would like to request money from the town budget. The idea was to add in this section here that says all organizations that are awarded funds must provide 2 reports during the fiscal year in which they receive funds. One report is due by January 15th, and we'll provide an update on organizations' activities in the town of Richmond from July 1st through December 31st. The second report is due by August 15th, and we'll provide an update on the organization's activities in the town of Richmond from July 1st to June 30th. In reviewing this, I realized that that didn't really fit under any of these sort of like FAQs. So I added a 5th one about the reporting. I also added a date by which this is due because there hadn't been a date before. Our practice had been to get it the Wednesday prior to the second Monday in October. So it would be ready for the first budget meeting, which is typically the second Monday in October. So added that in. And then at the bottom where you sign, just wanted to make sure that people also understand that they must adhere to all rules as outlined in the town of Richmond discretionary funding policy, which appears as a cover sheet to this application. So there can be no question that they need to adhere to all the items on the cover page.
Questions, comments? Motion?
This is Bart. I'd like to move to approve the amended discretionary funding policy as presented.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Calling for a vote on the motion, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, aye.
Bart, aye. Jay, aye.
David, aye. Motion carries.
Lisa, I just want to point out, you're rapidly running out of chances to make your last motion.
Oh, boy.
Life will never be the same.
Still got adjourn left. That's
Well,
on
I
my
did
bingo
want to talk
card.
about things that revolve, so it looks like it's coming up. Wow.
So next we have consideration of approving Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan application for planning for flood resiliency of the wastewater pump station and force main.
Okay, so as the agenda item indicates, this is for water and wastewater. It would provide flood resiliency for the pump station and the force main, which runs underneath the Bridge Street Bridge. This should be subsidized 100% by the state. It's for about $78,000. It's for step 1 planning or very early sort of scoping studies essentially for this project. This is for the wastewater department, but the select board has borrowing authority for the town and thus is the body that would have the power to submit a loan application. Although if for some reason it's not funded at 100%, it would be paid back by the water and wastewater users, not the taxpayers.
So just so we're clear, there's no liability on the taxpayers. This would be paid back by the water sewer department, which is a town-run municipality.
Yes, I think the only possible liability on the taxpayers is if for some reason the water and sewer liability ceases to exist financially, then all outstanding debt would be backed by the grand list. But I think likelihood of that is fairly low.
We'll get struck by a meteor before that happens.
Well,
You saw the movie.
That could be arranged.
Yes, somebody attaches a lot of balloons to the treatment plant.
oh, that, yeah. So,
Confusing with Don't Look Up.
Yeah, that popped into my head first. I was like, oh no, and then he went to the Disney movie. So yeah, no, there's really no real risk to the taxpayers.
So you're ready. Mr. Chairman, I move that.
Yay!
Okay, but yay, okay, that
Mr.
the,
Chairman, I moved in.
I just moved. Do you want to say that?
Well, she did beat you. You did beat her in the.
Yeah, I got my
election.
I was in Healy. I was
You got to get your glass needling in.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town approve the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan application as presented.
Adam, second.
Any further discussion? So this is a motion to submit the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan application for planning for flood resiliency of the wastewater pump station and forced main. Absent any further discussion, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I
Adam, I.
Bart, aye. Jay, aye.
David, I.
love those force mains.
What's like just out of curiosity, what's the implementation timeline for this stuff, Josh, if they awarded? Is this like a 1, 2, 5 year project or?
I think to get to actual construction, it'd be several years.
Cool.
Moving on to approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders. Let's start with a motion to approve the draft minutes of the January 18th meeting as presented.
This Bart, so moved.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Did anybody see any need for any corrections? Hearing none, calling for a vote on the approval of the minutes of the February 18th meeting. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye. Jay, aye.
David, I. Next, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 24th special meeting.
This Bart, so moved.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
I wasn't there.
Oh, I was at this one actually. Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam.
Confused with the other one, sorry.
Yeah, we're different.
Yeah.
Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, abstain.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Jay, abstain.
Oh, it's all up to me. David, I. Next, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 24th public informational meeting.
This Bart, so moved.
Adam, I. Sorry, Adam, second.
Calling the vote to, calling for a vote on the motion. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, abstain.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
But it was a
David,
good
aye.
birthday party, by the way. You
Good.
guys missed a good party.
Okay, purchase orders.
Oh, yeah.
David Disbart, I move to approve purchase order number 5079 to Watershed Consulting Associates LLC for engineering for the Southview 3-acre stormwater permit in the amount of $32,600.
Adam, second.
Thank you, Bard. Thank you, Adam. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
David, I. Purchase order is approved.
David Bart again, I'd move to approve purchase order number 5221 to the Heinsberg Police Department for police coverage in November 2024 in the amount of $29,137.50.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
David, I. Motion
Hello.
carries.
Quick question, I guess.
Yeah.
On these, I don't know if this is like a business thing versus town thing, but generally we always do POs before we do work or stuff. Is that?
Yeah. Before we do the warrants?
No,
Before we actually do.
issue the PO before they actually do any work.
Oh.
in that place. It's like. would that
Unless
be-
we're amending one that was already issued.
Yeah, but
very-
this is going
just out of
back 4
curiosity. Okay.
months, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Heinsberg clearly got behind on their billing. And with
Is
these,
it like, because I know like Green Mountain, if we did that, we just stiff them. So do we just?
It's tempting.
No. That was always the thing is like, if you do the work without a PO, like you're not getting paid.
oh,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not
Fully
saying that
budgeted
we
for
actually
it.
do that. That was a joke.
yeah, no, but,
What if somebody was injured during it and we hadn't purchased it?
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So.
Hmm.
So I mean, what we've done in some of these cases is even if like, so like we won't get the bill from them for, let's say, March, until the end of March.
Gotcha.
And then we'll say, okay, that's how much it was. We've got the agreement in place of how much we're gonna pay them, or well, not how much we're gonna pay them for, we're doing this. So then they give us the bill and then we do the PO.
It is tricky because
So these
it's
are
not-
within the context of an agreement.
Yeah, it's not like, it's like, so this one, right, so
we haven't executed agreement.
we do, and it does get
We
funky,
just-
so
we
like.
approved that. so
With
it's not-
No, no, good
Watershed
point.
Consulting, and Watershed is a better agreement because it actually has like the amount in it.
Yeah.
So we do the PO here and then we do the invoicing afterwards.
Okay, that makes sense from the police perspective too. I
Yeah.
Imagine, I know that the bills vary differently depending on how many hours and all that, so
They
we
do.
kind of treat the agreement like the purchase order where it's like authorizing an amount of money and stuff.
I guess, yeah, I mean.
I understand why that's tricky. I'm not,
No,
I think we're doing it wrong. I'm just asked the question.
it's a
The
good,
PO, like.
Yeah,
should come first.
The name PO sounds like it would.
Yeah.
so.
No, and I think that we don't follow it
Huh.
perfectly because there's
I don't know how you
certainly,
would in that situation, it would be tricky.
I guess we could do a PO for up to $30,000 for the next month. And then if they came in at under that, we would just pay the bill. And if they came in over that, we have to amend the PO. So there would be ways to get ahead of it. And I think,
Would that be worth the time on do you imagine, or you think it's an added step for no reason?
it's probably an added step to be more proactive and do it in the right order. So we should probably strive for that because I think most POs that are over 10,000 that come to the board, we haven't purchased things yet, but with this one, it's sort of an ongoing one.
It is a unique situation.
I mean, I do know there's times too when, I mean, I sign POs under 10. There are times when things have already been ordered too. It's like, oh yeah, I bought these, whatever, for $2,000. Okay, yeah, it's in your budget. I'm gonna sign
So
it.
we're normal.
But we could get tighter with those controls, and if the board would like, for this one specifically, if you'd like me to give you a PO right now for March for an up to amount, we could do that just to get into better practices and try to, get better as we see ones that we're
Let's
not
do it.
doing right. Okay.
Small step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, let's try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we voted on this yet, did we?
No, we did not.
We did not.
But it was seconded?
No, I thought
I asked.
This was
after
the other
we
one.
voted, We
we
haven't.
finished 5221. We have not yet moved 52.
Oh, okay,
didn't
so I'll
move
call
this
for a
one.
motion to approve
Mr. Chairman, I move, we approve purchase order number 5222 to the Heinsberg Police Department for December 2024 policing services in the amount of $32,210.
Wait,
Lisa?
did you, sorry, we approved November?
Yes.
Second.
We did,
We
okay.
approved it.
Next
We
year.
approved
We approved
November,
November.
so PO 5221, we approved
Okay.
that, and then
This is
then
5222.
I asked the question.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I second the motion.
I already did.
Oh.
Mike.
Calling for a vote on the motion, please
Iron
identify
Proof.
yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I.
Art, aye. Jay, aye.
David, I. Motion carries.
I know there'll be one more.
Ooh,
I move to approve purchase order 5230 to the Heinsberg Police Department for police coverage in January 2025 in the amount of $24,790.
it's Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Lisa. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I.
Art, I.
Jay, aye.
David, I.
One, should we do two right now? Because even if we do the next one, that would only be February, and technically it's not technically 100% not February. So to truly get ahead of it, we would need to have two.
Yeah.
I'm not.
We just did November, December, January. I think I just got the February bills
Well, that's true.
recently. They're in my inbox right now for
Wait,
February. So
look at
next
those
week I'll
lists.
come back with the PO and an invoice for February and a PO for March. That'll be, I'll put like $35,000 or something. So that way we hopefully will be under it. And then we don't need to amend the PO unless we go over that. But just be forewarned that the PO might be, or will be hopefully for more. I'll try to do it within reason. I won't do $100,000 PO, but.
Yeah.
So there'll be a discrepancy.
There's
between
enough
the PO and the
variability.
final bill,
I
but
thought
it might be
Southview was going to be tough.
Alright.
This is a lot harder.
Yeah, no, but I think that's the right, I mean, that should,
Yeah.
that's, we should, where we can make those corrections, let's strive to do it.
Cool.
Next, I would entertain a motion to approve the warrants as presented.
This Bart, so moved.
Thank you, Bard.
Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody have any questions on the warrants? Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Adam, I.
Art, I.
Jay, aye.
David, aye. Warrants are approved. Items for next agenda.
Welcoming our new select board member,
Mm.
Yay, new board.
whomever that may wind up being.
Yeah, it's gonna be a nail biter.
Yeah, it's just a matter of protocol. Do I need to come to that meeting? Because she's not sworn in yet.
Every Richmond resident is welcome to come.
Ooh,
You just have to sit
okay.
over there.
You mean you have to be a
And
resident?
if you don't show up,
Your term actually ends at 7
Right.
PM tomorrow night.
Yeah.
If I don't show up, she can't get
we
sworn
can, no,
in.
we can guilt you like crazy. You know what it's
Well,
like to
I'm
be
sure
on
I
here.
understand.
So I
The
think
recorder,
the new town clerk will take care of swearing in and we'll make sure that we get, or did we do that in the meeting? I'll call swearing
The
in.
new member will get sworn in, but they get seated at the meeting.
Yeah, they'll be at the meeting. So like you don't need,
just drop by the front,
procedurally,
yeah.
you don't need to be here for like a passing of the seat or anything
okay,
like that.
not bring a chair cushion or anything.
I mean, you could bring her a chair cushion. She might appreciate that. But
Pretty awesome.
legally, there's nothing that you have to do at the
Okay.
meeting. We certainly love to see if you make it. But yeah, and then there'll be a reorganization. So there'll be voting for chair, vice chair, as well as paper of record and some organization.
We have to actually elect
And yeah, usually nominate who's gonna do the minutes, things like that.
a nominating card.
For the minute.
Bad choice.
I thought you were gonna nominate AI, which
Well,
actually assists with minutes right now anyway.
It's actually doing a bang up job.
And then Water Sewer Commission,
Yeah, so Water Sewer Commission we'll talk about after Water and Sewer Annual. Oh, no, you're right. Well,
It won't be eligible to
Fill
be.
the chair, right, because you'll
Right.
be off. So yeah,
I'm
we'll
not
talk
eligible,
about,
so
let me make sure I do that.
Yeah.
This is your
Good,
big
I almost
chance to
forgot
reclaim the reins of power.
Water Sewer Commission appointment, and that will be lasting until
Hell, hey.
45 days after the, yeah, so sometime in June.
Hmm.
Okay, good point. All right.
So when I walk out the door, I'm free and clear.
You are?
Well,
No.
tomorrow, you have to be here tomorrow.
Come tomorrow.
You gotta be here
All
tomorrow.
right.
And David's got a plan. He's not gonna show up, so you'll have to chair.
The big one.
Actually.
So for next meeting, we've also got, yeah, reorganization,
Not the worst one.
Yeah.
recap of town meeting, appoint a delinquent tax collector, the FY 26 capital plan hearing. We might have something for the library about sealing the foundation to keep the mice out. We'll have a flag return box
She's got her hand up.
draft. We'll have renewal of leases for the town center tenants, hopefully. We'll bring back the subcommittee idea for the town plan. So we wanted to revisit that after we were all seated. And I think I'll have an ethics policy revision that will take the state policy and apply it to everybody. I went back to the attorneys, gave me close to a draft. I had a couple questions, so hopefully we can get that to a pretty final place before next meeting.
Bart?
And just to point out that that also entails documenting who's done the training, which
Yeah.
you guys have set up as just a reminder for how that all is
Yeah,
supposed to work.
and that was part of my feedback to the attorney, because they came back with, I thought, like, I gave them the draft, they came back with some good changes. But part of it was embedding in there that everybody needs to get training, here's how often it has to happen. And then I also included a sign off sheet, because our current code, I like the way our current code has every year, every committee is supposed to review the code of ethics in a meeting and then sign off that you've read it. So I added that, because I think even if you don't take the training every 3 years, reviewing it as a committee every year and signing off that you've read the code every year is a good idea. So I made that a requirement for every employee, volunteer, and board member.
I still think we should have them take a test.
We could do a test if you want to, too.
No, I mean, seriously.
You know, I mean, we should talk about this next time, but my only concern about a test is that I'd like to kind of keep the official things from the state so that we keep it.
Okay, I just,
official. But if
we all know that people say, I read
I
this.
know.
And just,
And we could still do a test if you want to. Let's discuss it at next meeting.
Gene, go ahead.
So I don't know if it has to be on the next meeting or if it's just something that you guys can discuss amongst yourselves. But I looked at I reviewed the Heinsberg budget online and I printed out a copy of it. And I really liked their format. I liked the way it was presented. I liked the fact that it was done kind of like an Excel spreadsheet and there were grid lines. And so it was easy to see across the line, you know, as to what number you were looking at. They also had a really nice summary page that I think was super helpful, especially if we are going to next year, maybe break the budget into departments to be voted on by departments. And so at any rate, I just wanted to mention that. And I don't know if you guys have ever looked at the Heinsberg budget format, but I just thought it was a really good format. I really liked it. I thought it was easy to read and just really helpful. So that was all.
Okay, Gene, thank you for that.
Yep.
Just in comment, Gene, the grid lines cost 5 cents each, so we were trying to keep costs down.
We can take a look at it. I think
She hung up.
I think a good time to look at
No,
that.
she did. She's right there. I suspect
Yeah,
it's for you.
planning next year's budget.
I'm still
We
listening.
can look at if there's format changes we want to do. We can look at that.
And maybe give a heads up to Connie. So just to be clear, Gene, that it's really Connie as the staff person that's primarily responsible for the budget documents.
Hmm.
And I just want to share the latest chat. Aaron from MMC TV says, thank you, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Eric.
We'll have the group hug if you choose to participate tomorrow at the end of the meeting.
Like a mosh pit. Kind of.
Yeah.
Never
You
been
can
to
dive off the stage.
I think
Oh,
we are
surf.
done.
crowd surf. Oh,
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
wow, it's a crowd.
Thank you, Jay.
They part. There you go.
Somebody say second.
Second.
There.
Thank you, Bard. Voting on the motion for adjournment, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Lisa, I.
Adam, hi. Bart, aye.
Jay, aye.
Dave, aye.